So we're gonna get started. So tonight's Zoom webinar for friends and family is on and off campus housing. So we're joined today with representatives from our Office of Residential Life and Housing and then our Office of Off-Campus Living, who are here to speak to you about their offices, the res halls, finding an apartment in the city and near our campus, and answer any questions you may have. If you do have a question, please make sure to use the Q&A option. So if you see on your screen, it should say Q&A. If you submit a question there, our OLs are monitoring that throughout the presentation to answer any questions you have. And then if your question has like a little tab under it that says will be answered live, at the end of the presentation, I will be reading those off to the presenters for them to answer for you. But to start off, my name is Jen McGee. I am a rising senior from Haverhill, Mass, double majoring in social psychology and communication. I am the orientation program assistant for family programs here at UMass Boston. And today we are joined with 9 other orientation leaders, and they are going to introduce themselves to all of you. So I'm going to pass it off to them.
Hi, I'm Val. I'm a sophomore from Stoughton, Mass. I'm a music major and I minor in cognitive science and wealth, poverty, and opportunity, and I also work as a tutor on campus.
Hello, I'm Jessica. I'm a rising junior nursing major from Malden, Massachusetts, and on campus I'm an orientation leader.
Hi, I'm Gilmathan Dovae. I'm a rising junior, early education major from Chelsea, Mass, which I also work for the Chelsea IT staff there, which is about 5 to 10 minutes away from UMB.
Hi, I'm Melissa Cepeda. I'm a rising sophomore. I'm a psychology and theater arts double major. I'm from Haverhill, Mass. And my involvement on campus is that I work with the performing arts department.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nicolas. I use he, his pronouns. I'm from Braintree, Mass. I'm a biology major with a minor in cinema studies. Rising sophomore. And on campus, I'm involved with the Office of Student Leadership and Community Engagement.
Hello, I am Janine Vasquez. I am from Denver, Colorado. I am a rising junior majoring in nursing with a minor in human rights and women, gender, and sexuality studies.
Hello, everybody. My name is Danielle Impofo. I'm a rising sophomore from Leicester, Massachusetts, and I'm a bio major on a pre-med track.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yasmin Hamdi. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm from Everett, Massachusetts, majoring in management with a concentration of marketing. And on campus, I've been involved with Beacon Voyages for Service.
Hi, good evening. My name is John Ray Javier. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a rising senior. I'm from Drake, Massachusetts, majoring in IT, and I'm involved as a resident assistant.
So now that you've had an opportunity to hear from all of our orientation leaders and orientation staff, they will be here throughout the entire Zoom webinar to answer any questions you have in the Q&A. They'll also be available if there is time to do a short student Q&A panel. So please make sure to submit your questions to the Q&A tab. And I am going to pass the call off to our Vice Chancellor of Enrollment Management, John Drew, to speak about our university's Fall 2020 plan.
Thanks so much, Jen, and thank you for everyone who's participating in tonight's program. I'm thrilled to have a couple minutes that I get to steal out of the program to talk a little bit about some of our fall plans. First, let me congratulate you and your student on getting this far in the process. I know the process can be a bit daunting, but you've made it, and so that's exciting. Tonight's program is particularly exciting because it's on the housing topic, which is always one that's popular and people are interested in hearing about. A few things that I thought I would address up front, just because there's so many questions swirling around what we'll be doing in the fall in light of COVID and all of that uncertainty. As you hopefully are aware at this point, we've sent some communications out that we will be remote for our class operations in the fall, at least starting that way. We felt when we looked at all the science and working with experts in the area and throughout the nation that this just made the most sense for our community. To make sure that the education doesn't get interrupted midway through and that all of our students and faculty and staff stay safe starting the fall semester. That's particularly important to us. Our hope would be to certainly phase things in as it seems appropriate and as the health conditions allow us to do that. It also gives us the opportunity this summer for our faculty and our staff to prepare for your, I guess, virtual arrival, you could say. Our faculty are working really hard to make sure that the educational experience is top notch. And one of the things I want to make sure that is understood is remote education and online education are two very different things, and that's how we view it. Online education has been around for years, and many students choose to pursue a degree online. It's a flexible opportunity. For us, remote education, as much as we can, we are going to mimic the experience that one would have in a face-to-face classroom. And there's many ways that we can do that. Our faculty are working hard using tools like Echo, VoiceThread, Blackboard, Zoom, and all types of other platforms that I'm not even familiar with to make sure that the experience is engaging. And that's really the key. Many times these courses are going to be offered synchronous, and so the students will be participating in them in a set time like they would a normal classroom. Some faculty may choose to provide a bit more flexibility, which actually some students enjoy, that maybe our lecture is recorded and a student can consume it on their own. They can go back and listen to it. Faculty will still hold office hours as they typically would. They'll have check-ins. Some parents have asked me about attendance. That's typically still part of the process. And so in many ways, the classroom experience, thanks to the technology and all the technology that students are accustomed to now, does not have to be that different. There's still ways of having engaging conversation, spirited debates, and all of that. And that's what our faculty are working on this summer to make sure when we kick off in the fall semester, the education experience is robust. Also get a lot of questions often about the cost. Certainly top of mind, it always is. Higher education is certainly not as inexpensive as any of us would like. We are not reducing the cost for the fall semester. One of the things that we want everyone to be aware of is typically when we set our budget, and certainly this year, we are accounting for about a 2.5% increase that typically gets approved in July. We have decided, although the Board of Trustees has to do final approval, that we will forego that 2.5% increase that we would normally have, certainly understanding that financially these are challenging times. And so our hope is to hold the tuition and fees flat going into fall 2020. So hopefully that will help a little bit. All of the services that we provide will still be available to students. Our student affairs team and Patrick and John and Melinda are part of that group, and Jen are working really hard to make sure they're providing a robust student life experience. Many of these orientation leaders are involved in so many of our clubs and organizations, and they're gonna be knocking on your virtual door, so you're gonna have no choice but to participate in their clubs and organizations and activities. And I'm confident in their ability to draw you into our community. It's a pretty, I shouldn't say infectious community, I guess. Don't want to say that this time of year. But it really is a place that we try to get our students to get involved in clubs and organizations and develop leadership skills and really discover who they are as an individual. So all that will still be part of the process. And as I said, our hope is as we move through the fall semester and the health conditions allow, that we'll begin to introduce more and more services and face-to-face services on campus. I will tell you all of our offices have been working really hard in remote operations. So if you need help with financial aid or the One Stop or health services, all of those services are and will continue to remain available to students. And so we want you to take full advantage of all that we offer. We have staff geared up to do that. And so we encourage you to certainly do that. So those are typically the kind of the most pressing questions that we are getting. We do have financial aid teams that are available to help. They're answering the phones like normal. You can send them an email. Same with the undergraduate admissions team. So if you have questions for any of those offices, please don't hesitate to reach out to them. We're excited that you have decided to send your student off to UMass Boston. We're looking forward to seeing them and let us know if we have any questions throughout the summer. We're here for you.
Thanks, John. So next, I am going to pass our presentation off to the Director of Housing and Residential Life, John Sears.
Thank you, Jen. I would also like to mirror what Vice Chancellor Drew just shared. Congratulations to you all on becoming beacons this fall. And I'm joined by some colleagues in housing. Jen Giuliano, Assistant Director in Operations, Rochelle Marshall, Associate Director for Residential Education, and Melinda Davis, my colleague, Director of Housing Operations, who I'll turn it over to her right now to get us started. Our goal is to give you an idea of what housing will look like this fall and then also have an opportunity for you to ask some questions on some things that we haven't covered. The housing staff have been hard at work, as John's mentioned, over the last few months, putting together a plan for you all, and we're hoping that we'll answer many, if not all, of your questions tonight. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to my colleague, Melinda, to get us started.
Great. Thanks so much, John. I want to welcome everyone this evening, and hopefully we'll have a chance to answer all of your questions during our time tonight. So this first slide that you're seeing here is actually a picture of our East Residence Hall. You can see the beautiful lounges there on the corner, and that famous sign that has become the wonderful spot for many pictures of students here at UMass. So we're excited to welcome you. Next slide, please. Thanks. So we're doing a little bit different design for room assignments this year. That's always an infamous question at orientation time, is what is my room assignment and when do I get it? Well, what we're doing this fall is we are actually having each student go into a private bedroom, and they will also have their own bathroom. By design of the building, we have a large amount of rooms that actually have their own bathroom inside the bedroom, and that is a good portion of the students living in the building this fall, and that's double bedrooms, triple bedrooms, and quads. And we also have some small number of some single bedrooms as well that will have their own bathroom inside. And then we also have rooms that are typically called double community, and you see double community and large double community listed here, which those students usually use a community bathroom in the hall. What we are doing this year is we are adding door locks to those bathrooms, and those will be assigned to students specifically. So they will have a key, and that bathroom will be for them only. You see the rates listed there are proposed rates that are pending approval. And so we do have a comment on the bottom that there may be an additional fee. We are looking into having students have a COVID-19 test prior to coming into the building, and perhaps throughout the semester as well, all in looking for the best interest of the students and safety and health reasons. And then additional, of course, there may be an increase in the rate due to operational expenses for COVID-19. We want to make sure the building is disinfected as frequently as possible, and any other, hand sanitizer and things like that, to make sure that the students who are in the building are getting, what they need for safety. Housing priorities. So those of you who have received a license agreement, whether you've completed it or not, would have received a survey from us. There's an email talking about what our plans are for the fall, but it also included a survey. We had a good amount of you complete the survey. Thank you so much for doing that. If you have not completed the survey, please do fill that out. We very much want to know who is still interested in living on campus with us this fall. You can see here the rank of prioritization that we have: international students, out-of-state students, obviously students who are unable to commute to campus, and then distance from campus would be next, and then any students who do have coursework on campus. I have received a few questions on when students will hear, if they stated yes, when will they hear from our office? We are going through those surveys this week, and the surveys are due Thursday. And once we get through that information next week, we will know how many students are interested and how many are in each of those categories, and then we will reach out with answers. A lot of students ask and families ask how the payment process works, and it's a little different here at UMass Boston. So I just want to take a moment to explain that. So there are two options for payment. Payment can be done by semester, which is the same as the university, which means the payment would be due on August 1st, and that would be for the entire fall semester. And then for the spring semester, it would be due January 1st. The second option is to pay in installments, and that would be 4 installments for the fall, which would be August, September, October, November, no payment in December, and then January, February, March, April, no payment in May. And really that's just the semester divided into 4 installments. It is important to know that the university bill is specifically for tuition and fees. and also the meal plan. You will not see housing on the UMass Boston bill. We receive a lot of questions. I don't see housing on my Weiser bill. Is housing included in my tuition? No, you'll receive a separate login for housing, and there will be a housing portal that will be all things housing, room assignments. You can do work orders if a light bulb goes out or something like that. Completely separate system for housing. So that's important to know. When you have any housing questions, you would go to that housing portal or contact our office directly. And you would receive information about housing. Everything will go to your UMass Boston email account, so you want to make sure that you check that account pretty regularly. Financial aid and loans, another infamous question. So students ask, can I use financial aid or any loans or scholarship towards housing? The answer is yes. So if you are receiving, if you applied for a loan or you are receiving some kind of aid from high school or elsewhere, that would immediately go towards your tuition and fees bill with the university. If there is any excess amount, that would be reimbursed to you, the student, and then you can use that money to pay housing. It does not go directly to housing. Again, just think of housing as being something completely separate and not linked there. So you would want to take that refund check or reimbursement direct deposit that you receive, and then you can make a payment in the housing portal. So you're probably used to hearing about the infamous move-in day. Hundreds of students showing up on the same day with all of their belongings and cars and fun and excitement and music. Well, obviously, thanks to COVID-19, we are unable to do that this year. So what we will be doing in its place is we will be having drop-off days. So those days will happen in August, and we will notify students when they will take place, and they will make an appointment so that we can be sure that we are not having a large number of students arrive on the same day. And we want to make sure that it is safe for everyone to come at the same time while observing social distance guidelines. We will permit a few early arrivals days before the actual move-in weekend, which is Labor Day weekend. And then the move-in day of September 5th, that will be a final drop-off date. And that weekend, we will have students again spread out throughout the weekend where they will come and actually take occupancy of the building. So they will go to their room, just them, to actually live in the building. Prior to that, they would just be coming to drop off items. Obviously, if students are from out of the country or from far away and they are unable to come and drop off items prior, and then head back home safely, then they would have a later day and just take occupancy at that time. We would be doing screening prior to this to make sure that students are able to come to campus, and also COVID-19 testing is planned to happen at that same time.
So you're talking.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, I'll turn it over to John.
Oh, thanks, Melinda. So we do want to address and preview some of the health considerations that we're thinking of for this fall, and know that this features prominently, if not premierly, in our planning for this coming academic year. Of course, we're going to follow state guidance as Massachusetts opens back up in phases. We'll be taking our cues from the state and the guiding health agencies on the additional freedoms as the state determines it's safe to do so. Well, other things that we're looking at doing are pre-arrival screenings for students before they get to campus. In addition, symptom tracking for residents as a precaution. Melinda mentioned COVID-19 testing as an onboarding procedure when students arrive to campus. And then also we're looking, at least right now, testing every 30 days as a precautionary measure. You may hear other schools that are doing testing more frequently, less frequently, but in the end, this will be a decision that's made in consultation with our university health services. But right now we're looking at additional testing every 30 days. We also have set aside some rooms for quarantine and isolation. In most cases, students will be able to quarantine and isolate in their rooms, but we've also set aside some rooms as a precautionary measure for students. COVID-19 is a reality that we're all facing, and so we're taking precautions, not to sound scary, but more just to be ready if we do have cases, that we're in the best circumstances to be able to assist those students. Cleaning will be done by the housing staff initially, and there will be a higher tempo of cleaning in common areas and high touch areas. Students will be responsible for bringing and supplying their own masks. And then we'll also have social distancing guidance in place. In addition to social distancing, we're going to be looking at reduced density in a lot of common areas. This includes lounges, first floor space and study space, and also the dining commons. And those details will be forthcoming soon. One of the things that we definitely want to share with you is our secret weapon, and that's our hall staff. We have traditional resident assistants. The ratio will typically be 1 to every 30 or so residents that will be assigned this fall. In addition, we have community directors and other live-in staff assistant directors on site that assist and supervise the RAs. Some of the things that we're looking at doing through the on-campus support system are a robust programming, of which I'll talk about in a minute. But these resources are on site and available to you to assist you, one, in the adjustment to campus, and also as you get started living on campus, learning the ins and outs of living on campus. And these staff are available on call 24/7. We'll also be standing up again this year our Residence Hall Association, or RHA. Those are some are elected positions that we have elections within the first month of the fall semester. And then we also have community representatives where you can join without being part of the election. And one of the things that we're considering this year as a new addition to RHA is a inclusivity and diversity chair. That will be an elected position for RHA to help us navigate through and help mobilize students around the Black Lives Matter and fighting racial injustice. I mentioned programming earlier. The Residence Hall staff are putting together a robust programming series that involves really 3 main things. One of them is homegrown community development programs. The other is referring students to university-wide programs. And then also our RAs will be doing personal outreach to each student. And when they do that at select times during the fall semester. One of the things that we're going to start with this semester it's not by choice, but we'll be doing a lot of things virtually. The state won't allow us, nor is it prudent to have large gatherings, as you know. And so many of our programs will be virtual to start off, and then we'll be expanding privileges as it becomes safe to do so and as the state reopens. Another area where I want to draw your attention to is living learning communities. We're sponsoring 3 this fall. One is a wellness community co-sponsored by the nursing school, a First Forward community for first-generation students, and then also a Leadership for Social Change, which is for students that are interested in social justice movements and also leadership. And these are still available to you through the housing application. We'd be remiss if we didn't comment a little bit about what life in the halls will be like around visitors and public space. We're going to be looking at a phase model that maps to state guidance on reopening. And eventually we're looking at expanded occupancy. We don't anticipate doing that anytime before January, but as the environment and the state guidance on phased reopening warrants, we'll be looking to increase occupancy in the residence halls to add additional students. When conditions allow, residents will also be able to sign in guests. Many schools in the Boston area are restricting that privilege right now, at least to start the semester, and UMass Boston is not any different. We want to be very careful about protecting the residential community at the start of the fall semester. And then I also want to make reference to your key resource for residential living, and that's the resident handbook that will be available online. And probably equally as important is an addendum that addresses specific COVID-19 pandemic considerations as we open up for fall this year. It contains many policies and expectations around living in the residence halls. And as I mentioned, there will be a COVID-19 addendum that will outline specific expectations and requirements around living safely in the halls. And you can see on the web address there your access to the housing handbook. Go to the housing handbook and it's under policies and procedures. I'll throw it back to Melinda and she can talk to you a little bit about what you should be thinking about bringing this fall.
Yes, and at this point, if you can just go to next slide. Perfect. It's a long list, so you have to keep tabbing. But I think this is a great time to take a picture to see what you should consider bringing and what you should not bring. What I like to mention is for students with private bathrooms, which in this case would be everyone who's living on campus would have a bathroom assigned to them. Make sure that you bring bathroom supplies, including cleaning supplies, so that you can make sure that you're taking care of your own bathroom. We do have, I like to note that we do have that pets are not allowed. We do allow fish, but if there is an emotional support animal, you can make that request. Just email housing@umb.edu, and we will share that paperwork with you in regards to what needs to be completed to make that request to have an ESA in the building. Next slide, please. And get prepared to come to campus. So these are 2 vendors, there's a few, keep clicking, that we like to promote. And this is OCM. They offer things such as sheets and other items that you may want in your room when you come to campus. And the other is Microfridge. Now you can see in the picture there, it's a refrigerator on the bottom with a freezer on top, and then there's a microwave on top of that. This is actually great because when you're using the microwave, the refrigerator section will turn off. So it's great energy efficiency there. And also most mini fridges don't have real freezers in them. If you've ever looked at a mini fridge, it kind of gives you this odd compartment, which is where your ice cream is supposed to fit, but it doesn't really fit. So I personally think this is a great investment. So these are not specifically affiliated with UMass, but we've used them in the past and think that they are great partners. So definitely take a picture if you're considering either of those items. Next slide, please. Perfect. So our website will be updated throughout the summer. We do have frequently asked questions on there now. If you want to check that out and see if there's anything on there that we may not have discussed today that might be able to be answered. And also, probably the most important thing is to check your UMass Boston email account. That is where we send license agreements. That is where we send general communications about housing or things that are coming up or important deadlines. So please make sure, not just now, but even during the school year, there are other departments and offices on campus that will share information. So make sure that that's, if not once a day, multiple times a day, you are checking that email account. And last but not least for us is follow us. Take a picture here and make sure that you are following us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and our new TikTok page. We actually just started that a few weeks ago, and you'll see John Ray, one of your fabulous OLs, who has done a recent video. Yes, I'm calling you out, John Ray, because it's awesome. And you'll see some tidbits of information about housing and maybe important stuff that you want to know. So we're jumping in the TikTok game. Definitely check us out. And now we're passing it off to Patrick. No, it's fine. Go ahead, Patrick.
Hey everyone, my name is Patrick Joseph Jr. I am currently serving as the Assistant Director for Off-Campus Living. Not quite in the TikTok game just yet, but we are on Instagram and Facebook. So if you want to follow us and just give us a share at UMB Off Campus, that would be greatly appreciated. It's a great way to just stay connected with everything that we're doing. Just in case you all didn't know, obviously when we get back to campus, the great, but we are located on the 3rd floor of the campus center. And that is our email. You can reach out to us at offcampus@umb.edu. That on the screen for a little while, just so folks can take pictures, just in case I don't answer certain questions or you think of other questions later on after this presentation that I could possibly help you with. All right, so like I mentioned, contact information, I just wanted to give you guys a quick glimpse of some of the things that we are able to assist students with. I'm going to go over some of these things within the next as well. But just some quick tidbits of information. We do assist students with helping navigate the housing search. So after your students have their experience living on campus for their first academic year, that's where we step in. We provide workshops. We do one-on-one housing consultations with students if they're having just a hard time being able to find housing on their own, and possibly even connecting them with real estate agents and different landlords in the areas as well. Just a more laid out glimpse of everything as well. We also assist students with getting involved on campus. We know that and completely acknowledge that, like, once you begin sometimes once you begin your life as a off-campus or commuter student, it's easier to kind of unplug from campus, but we do want to keep people involved. So our team of community ambassadors, which I'll be talking about next, are there to help do that and act as a bridge to the rest of campus. And at the same time, help you navigate some of that life off campus and figuring out tips for commuting and things that you can be doing on campus while you might be spending time in between classes. We also help students with understanding their leases and advocating for them as well. A lot of students sometimes are going to be going into the rental process for the very first time, and we get that it can be very overwhelming for them. And then also for you as parents and family members. So we are here to help with that. And if need be, we can connect you guys with legal resources that can also help any major issues that may need to be taken to court. But we do offer services where we help answer any questions that you do have in regards to leases. In terms of referrals, not only do we offer referrals to landlords, but we also offer referrals to real estate agents and real estate brokers in the area. So if that's ever something you had a question about, you can feel free to reach out to us, and I'll also show you where exactly you can find that on our website later today. Like I mentioned before, we offer those one-on-one housing consultations. So once, on top of and they're essentially like workshops, but on top of the workshops where we basically kind of break down how exactly students can go about searching for housing, searching for roommates. Sometimes students don't always feel comfortable doing that, or sometimes students want to get things broken down and with a little bit more depth. So we will offer that one-on-one communication with them. Sometimes, most of the time it's me, sometimes it's my community ambassadors as well. But it goes a little bit further, in terms of just covering more than what we have on the site. Yeah, we'll move on to the next slide. So these are just a couple of our community ambassadors. So they do a lot of work, essentially the face of the off-campus living department and Heartbeat, and help get a lot of things done on campus. They are here to keep your students connected and also do events and programs for your students as well. All of our students live off campus, so they have searched for off-campus housing themselves, or they are currently commuting from a family member's home. So they can tell your students all about what to expect and some of the pitfalls to avoid. They offer those tips. They also help facilitate some of those workshops. So sometimes the workshops can just cover something generic, finding off-campus housing. Sometimes it can cover something like subletting. Sometimes it can cover budgeting. So they're honestly a great resource because they are the ones who are still also doing it. I definitely lean on them all the time when I have questions myself. They help oversee the social media, our blog posts, and more. So I would definitely consider having your students utilize them when the time comes and they're thinking about living off campus. So this is just our website. It will be going through some remodeling soon, just in case you guys haven't seen it before. The address is at the very bottom left-hand corner, offcampushousing.umb.edu. This is an off-campus housing site that a third party does help us manage. It's actually the party who owns it is actually named CoStar. They're the same party who owns the apartments.com domain. So we work with them to get a lot of these listings uploaded. So definitely check it out. If you ever have questions or issues or find yourself running into problems with vendors or individuals who post on the website, please shoot us an email so we can work on communicating with that individual and get you the help that you need. But a few things that I wanted to highlight was that all of your students, once they, now that they've been accepted into the University of Massachusetts, Boston, they will be able to log onto the site using their Wiser account login. So this is the login that they use for their email, their Wiser account to register for classes, their Blackboard account, which they'll find out more about later, all of those things. So they can use that same information to log on here. And if for some reason you want to take a look at it yourself, or maybe like, you have a student or a friend who's looking at UMass Boston and just wants to look at it as a guest, you can log on and create credentials as a guest. The credentials do expire after 30 days, so that's just something to keep in mind, but that is available for you. 3 things that I just wanted to highlight was that, one, we do have a housing tab that if you think about like the very first page that I showed you, it showcases basically different listings that are located in the Boston area. So these range from your larger apartment complexes like your Harbor Point and Peninsula apartments, which a lot of students do like to live in because of their proximity to campus after they live for the first year. So you'll see a lot of that. Sometimes you'll see even private properties that are owned by maybe say like, an older individual who's just wanting to rent out their bedroom. And there's also properties that are listed by larger property managers or real estate agents that they're looking to have students fill. Typically, all of the housing that's on there is very student friendly. And we even have some housing for like faculty and staff as well, and graduate students. So sometimes like landlords will specify that information, but it's a very simple site to use. There's also a roommates tab. And I think I saw a question looming somewhere in the Q&A just about like, how can a student or an individual go about finding roommates after their first year if they're having a hard time connecting with individuals during their first year living on campus. And that's super simple with this roommates tool. So by clicking on that link, when you have time to explore it, happy to set up one-on-ones with anyone who wants them if you email us, and I can kind of give you a better tour of the website so that we have more time. But with the roommates tab, basically it basically has different profiles for all of the students who are currently looking for roommates. It says what their price options are, it's roommate preferences are, where they're hoping to live, like in terms of neighborhoods. So if they want to live in Dorchester versus Quincy, all of that stuff is listed there, making the roommate search process a little bit more easier for students. And then lastly, the other big thing or big item that I want to just focus on is just the resources tab. There is tons of information on that resources tab, from things related to how COVID-19 has affected the housing search, or just how it's affected landlords and tenants, to like, a sample sheet or a roommate agreement sheet. All of that stuff is listed in the resources tab. So, but definitely spend some time looking through that as well, because it could definitely make the housing search process and also the living off campus process a lot easier. But I think I like to say that you get a lot of those skills during your first time living on campus. So that'll come in like, that'll come in a lot of handy once you do that. Moving on to the next thing, I just wanted to focus on the types of leases that a lot of students will see. So typically the apartment complexes across the street from us, Harbor Point and Peninsula Apartments, typically they do a tenancy with a lease versus a tenancy at will. And a tenancy with a lease is basically basically means that like, you're signing to live at an apartment a specified period of time. So sometimes that could be 3 months, that could be 6, 9, 12 months. It's something usually recommend students do, just so they know exactly how much time they have in a specific apartment, whereas tenancy at will, this is more so like at the landlord or tenant's pleasure. So like these things can change within 30 days. So these would be considered more so your month-to-month leases. So if a landlord were to permit someone to live there, they can decide like, giving the student like a 30-day notice and letting them know, hey, my grandson's going to be moving back, so I need you out by 30 days, and that's completely within their right. I typically tell students to avoid that, but sometimes it just fits their situation, so that's completely fine. But with the tenancy with the lease, you'll see that most landlords offer that. The property managers at Harbor Point and Peninsula Apartments offer this one. Typically, they offer students to sign up for 12-month leases. They do have shorter term leases, but those typically tend to be a little bit more expensive per month. And this is just a little bit of information about the process. I won't spend too much time on it because I do want to make sure that we have enough time for your guys' questions. I'll just hit on a few key items. That once an individual has decided they want to live off campus, it's important to come up with a budget and figure out what exactly you can live within in terms of your means. And this doesn't just include like your rent, but it also includes your utilities, the Wi-Fi bill, transportation costs, gas, groceries, maybe even how often you eat out, because that can be a big indicator in how much you should exactly be spending for off-campus housing. Searching for apartments, be very mindful of scams. If you or your student is ever worried that they're running into a scam, please email us at offcampus@umb.edu. We will help in determining like what's going on. And we have certain things, we have certain individuals who we can also reach out to if it is indeed a scam, that we can report that issue to in order to make sure that it gets removed from whatever website that is posted. If it's on our site, we will remove it completely because we have control over that. But if you find it on an apartments or Zillow.com, send us the information as soon as possible so we can work on getting in contact with our folks at the Attorney General's office to make sure that gets removed. Another big thing, contacting your landlord or management companies is going to make sure that you guys can view the apartments. Now that everything is going on with COVID-19, you'll notice a lot of virtual tours being offered. You'll see a lot of that on our website if you go to offcampushousing.umb.edu. And you'll see a lot of that on other different sites. Some people are just like offering like tours like via Facebook or Instagram or whatnot. Or sometimes like, there's like an agent or an individual who will literally show you around the campus with like their phone or something like that. So definitely try to see the apartments with your own eyes in some sort of way, just to make sure there are no major issues. I always tell students to prepare some questions to ask, so that's going to be huge. The one thing that I want to like hit on before I move on from this slide is in the second column, your upfront costs. A lot of students aren't always prepared for this, but you should be prepared to pay your first month's, last month's, and security deposit before you're able to sign off on the lease. So making sure that your student has that money ready to go is going to be extremely important. A lot of students do like to live in Harbor Point or Peninsula where they'll live with maybe like 2 or 3 other people. So it's very important to make sure that like all of those folks are on the same page. They all have that ready to go if they are splitting the cost. That way they don't lose the apartment and can move in without any issues. And this is just a sample timeline. This can also be found in the resources tab section on our website. I typically tell people to give themselves about 3 to 4 months to search for housing. You can do it in a shorter time span. You can also do it in a longer time span. But most of the time, what I find is that a lot of your private landlords are looking in sooner rather than later. So for them, there is such a thing as too early. But you honestly never know. With the apartment complexes like Harbor Point and Peninsula, you can get that process started early. Typically what I see is that a lot of students will start looking, or it's best for students to start looking at in the early spring semester, just because that's typically the time where like wait lists start to begin. And Harbor Point specifically, I know they offer certain deals to residents or just students. So it's good to make sure that you're just looking out for that. And then budgeting, we talked about this before. I just wanted to highlight this because we do have a sample budget sheet. I would like encourage that you use it. Boston can be a very expensive place to live. So getting familiar with how much exactly you'll be able to spend on a month-to-month basis is going to be very important, just in making sure that like you are able to have a good time in your experience, and aren't like spending in areas that you shouldn't. And I find that like a lot of students, sometimes they go in with a higher number and that they actually can afford, but when we do this budget sheet together, they realize like, okay, these are the actual costs that I can work with. It also has a line where you can enter in your financial aid monies just to see exactly what you how much money you can actually aid in order to help with your daily living expenses. And these are just some common terms. The only one that I'm going to focus, the only couple that I'm going to focus on, the cosigner, guarantor, and pet fee and deposit. So the cosigner and guarantor. So if you are a family member or a parent of a student, do know that Harbor Point and Peninsula typically do ask that your student has a cosigner stress guarantor, and this is basically a person who can guarantee to pay the borrower's debt if they aren't able to do that. Typically, all of the individuals, all of the tenants living at those properties have to have a cosigner stress guarantor, so be prepared for that. And then lastly, I will have like pets that they typically tend to bring with them. It's important to know that a lot of places do charge pet deposits pet fees, where basically you're paying like a monthly fee for your pet, whereas a pet deposit is more so like I give you this amount of money, and as long as there's no damages, I get that money back. So just some things to know. And that concludes the presentation. We'll go ahead and move on into the question period.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you to ResLife, John, Melinda, Rochelle, and Jen, especially for responding to some questions in the Q&A. That was very helpful. We did receive a few questions about tuition and just if there was going to be a reduction or what tuition would be in the fall of 2020. John Drew, would you be able to touch on that?
Sure. Yes, this is a pretty popular question, and we certainly understand why people are asking. There will not be a reduction in tuition and fees for the fall academic year. This is pretty consistent with most institutions. Most of our costs that we would typically have are still there. Salaries, faculty, services. Our goal is to mirror the experience as much as possible that students are accustomed to having when they enroll at UMass Boston. As I mentioned, and it may be some of you have joined a little bit later, we did anticipate typically tuition and fees unfortunately does go up every year. And we were slated to have about a 2.5% increase that would have typically been voted on in July. At this point, we are recommending, and it seems like the board will most likely approve a flat, so there will not be an increase. Our goal obviously is to keep tuition fees as reasonable as possible. We understand financially, cost to attend college for some can be very challenging. Our goal is to make that affordable as much as we possibly can, working with financial aid in our bursar's office. So for the fall semester, we will not be reducing, but we'll also be holding tuition fees flat is what we anticipate going into the fall semester.
Thank you. And then for the housing staff, I'm not sure if this would be a question for you or health services, but with your COVID-19 testing in the res halls, would that be paid in their fees for living in the res halls, or would that be paid by the students?
Yeah, great question. That's undetermined yet. And that's why we've included in our materials that this could be a student cost. And so know that the university leadership is looking at this, looking at the frequency of testing, looking at just within the last month how testing costs are coming down and the testing regimen is becoming more refined. So we just want to make students aware that this could be a cost that will be borne by students, but it's still a question as to whether that'll be something that the university can cover or if it's something that students will cover.
To add, I think the main concern is really for asymptomatic folks at this time and doing proactive testing and preemptive testing. And so there's still a lot of gray area specifically with insurance companies and their willingness to cover these costs. And so part of our conversations with UHS and in trying to sort out how we're going to be able to operationalize this, we have to factor in that individual people's insurance may be able to cover this, and it may be a cost to some other folks. I know that UHS is looking at securing cost-effective tests so that they can be able to quickly identify and address people who have symptoms on campus. And if a student does exhibit symptoms, those tests should be covered by insurance. So that's just wanted to add that, but UHS, we're working very closely with them on the testing answer.
Thank you for answering that. And then we did have a few questions about the housing contract and if with the survey responses would be given sometime mid-July on whether you would have housing or not. And people are just wondering if they said no on the survey, is their contract automatically canceled and they receive their deposit back? And then will they still have a chance to cancel if they do not receive housing or decide to change their mind?
Okay, I want to make sure I got all of that, Jen. So what was the first question?
Sorry, I tried to lump it all together.
That's okay. I just want to make sure I touch on all the points.
If they responded no to the survey, is their contract automatically canceled and do they receive their deposit back?
Yes. So when we receive the no response, we are sending those to admissions, and admissions will be processing a refund, and we are canceling their license agreement. This process can take a few weeks, depending on the volume of people who choose to cancel, and that is a manual process. So just please be patient with us, but if you did say no, we will cancel. The other important thing to mention is we do have several people who are completing the survey multiple times and giving different responses. In that case, we will not cancel the agreement. We'll follow up with the student to see what they're actually looking to do.
Okay, thank you for that part. The other part of the questions were, if you do receive an answer in July and the answer is either no, is your contract still automatically canceled if you say we can't provide you housing?
Yes. So if we fill up the building with all of the spaces that we have and we are unable to provide someone with housing, we would reimburse them their reservation fee, and there would be no cancellation fee, and we would cancel the agreement if they already have signed with us.
Okay.
I know there were some questions, just to throw it in there, regarding the spring semester. A lot of people are asking, well, if I choose not to live in the fall and the spring, or I don't get housing in the fall, can I get it in the spring? Let's touch on that now, Jen, just get it out of the way. So if we are full in the fall, which we plan to be, we cannot guarantee a space in the spring semester because we cannot guarantee that we will be opening additional spaces. We'll be following CDC guidelines, and we want to make sure that we can keep the building as safe as possible. So I cannot sit here and honestly say, yes, we will accommodate anyone who wants housing in the spring. I cannot honestly do that because we don't know if there will be another wave of the virus and we'll need to go back to phase 1, or if we'll need to just stay at the number that we're at. So we will definitely communicate with students. If you are interested in the spring semester and you choose not to live with us in the fall, let us know. We are making notes on every student's record so that when we are able to increase occupancy, we will reach out to all of those students and say, hey, just want to let you know, we are adding students to the building. If you're interested, we can send you a license agreement.
Thank you. And then one last part to the question about contracts. When is the final deadline, if you have one, on when parents and students can cancel the contract? So for instance, if you were to say yes, and then 2 weeks later they decide they don't want housing, is that still an option?
So right now, based on the chancellor's decision for housing or for classes for the fall, we want to give students and families an opportunity to mull that over and discuss whether they want to live on campus. So we are extending refunds for housing until July 15th. So at this point, I would contemplate it over with your family and decide, is this something that I want? So when we do get to you and we say, yes, you have housing, you know what you want to do. If we say no, then of course the decision is made for you. But I want everyone to start having those conversations so that they're ready and they do get, if they want to cancel, they can put that in by the July 15th deadline.
Thank you. And then another question for the housing staff was around how it works for selecting resident life residents for the fall of 2021. Would priority be given to students who were unable to live in the rest halls this year, or would it go to the normal few spots for sophomores and then still freshman priority?
So we go, we basically do 1 year at a time. So fall to spring, and then we have a whole new year. Each year we do permit a small number of students to apply to stay in the building for a second year, but it is not guaranteed. And there is some criteria for that process for them to request to return a second year. It is, since that's not guaranteed, our priority for the fall of 2021 would be incoming freshmen. If there are students who are in the building in the spring semester, and we revisit this process every year. So if we do decide that we want, again, a small number of students to return for fall 21, we'll share that process in the spring. But we would not continue from this fall to next fall. I saw that question in the chat. It's 2 different academic years.
Thank you.
No problem.
And then for, I'm not sure if this would be a financial aid question, but if you received any grant for living on campus and then do not receive housing, do they lose the grant if housing does become available in the spring, or would that be a question for financial aid?
That's a great question. So you're probably referring to the campus living grant. If you choose not to live on campus in the fall, or for some reason housing is at capacity and you're not selected to live on campus in the fall, then you'd forgo half of that campus living grant, the fall portion. Hopefully, we'll keep our fingers crossed that we're back to full occupancy, although we don't know, as Melinda said. But if they do increase the occupancy in the spring, and then you are selected to live there, it is our hope to be able to offer you the second portion, or the other half of that campus living grant for the spring semester.
Thank you. So I think that answers majority of our questions. The last question is just about when the decision for housing would approximately be made. If there is a date or time for that, that would be fantastic.
Sure. I mentioned a little earlier that we were sending out an email today saying that the deadline for the survey to be completed is this Thursday by the end of the day. Then we'll be closing it. And then we will be tabulating all of the results next week, looking to see, based on our priority system, who's an international student, who is out of state, and how many students want housing. And that really is a deciding factor. If we have 500 people who want housing, then we obviously need to go by that priority system. If we have significantly less, then it's possible that everyone who wants housing will get housing. So we really need to see what that looks like. So that's the plan for next week, is to tabulate all of that. And then hopefully the following week, I don't know what week that is, the 13th, we're hoping to be able to share some information regarding who we are able to offer housing to. And it's possible at that time that someone may be offered housing and still has changed their mind. We understand that this is a difficult time. New information is shared daily. Just as things change on our campus daily, things change in the world daily. So we know that these are hard questions and hard decisions. So definitely stay in communication with us. We will happily share anything that we know to help you in that process.
Thank you. And then we did just receive one more question. It's about what areas would be open with social distancing for students living on campus, or even students living off campus, if there would be any study rooms available.
Yeah, there are great question. There are facilities in the residence hall that are conference space, group meeting rooms, and study space. Those spaces will be available, but like we mentioned earlier, at a reduced density to be cognizant of health considerations. Right now, it's undetermined if there are other facilities that are going to be open on campus. That remains to be seen. Since the campus is going mostly remote, right now it's looking like many of those facilities, unless it's open to in-person classes, the few in-person classes, John may be able to comment a little bit more to that. But there are study space facilities in the residence hall. We're also working with our campus partners to see what else, what other features, when the time is right, for facilities on campus to be open. And it's too early to tell or identify what features of campus would be open. That's going to be a campus determination that's based on where the state is in terms of phased reopening.
Thank you. And then just to clarify, will all the labs on campus be open? John Drew, you may be the best one to answer this question.
When you're referring to labs, you're referring to particular lab courses. So that is, our decision to be remote means that 98 or 99% of our classes are remote or online modality. There are a dozen or so, or a couple dozen courses identified, and that was still being worked on, where we believe that a face-to-face instruction is necessary. That's nursing simulation labs, that is some of our science lab courses, or it may be some other course that has a component that requires the students to be on campus once or twice during the semester. It's a very limited number of courses, and most of those are upper level courses. So for the most part, first year students will probably be experiencing their education largely remotely. Just because you live in the residence hall doesn't mean that you're going to have face-to-face classes. I saw that in the chat, so I just wanted to clarify that. Your education is going to be remote largely. That's how you can plan. If you are in a course that is going to be face-to-face, like a lab course, that will be noted in our system within the next couple of weeks, and you will be made aware that that is a course, that is a face-to-face course. And then there's all the safety protocols, as John just outlined, everything that we need to take into account for the residence hall. We'll be taking those same safety protocols into account for nursing, science labs, and all of those, social distancing, cleaning the rooms, protective gear, all of that. So whatever's necessary, they'll do. So at this point, you really don't need to worry that much about, I know it's easy for me to say, about which courses that will be made aware to you if you need to know if you're taking a course that is face-to-face.
Thank you. And do we have time for one more question? Reslife, are you okay with going a little bit over? Okay, this question is for you all. How will the meals in the dining hall work?
That's a great question, and that's in development. We're working with our partners in dining services to outline what meals would look like. Some of the things that will probably be suspended for the fall semester are the traditional a la carte, where instead meals will be more prepackaged for health and safety considerations. The dining commons will likely be de-densified, and so our partners in dining services are still working out those details. Will be, they will either communicate directly, or we'll have details in our periodic communications to provide students more details as those plans start to become available here in the coming weeks.
Thank you. So I think that answers all of our questions for tonight. If you have any questions after we end this webinar, housing can be reached at, on-campus housing, can be reached at housing@umb.edu, and then off-campus housing can be reached at patrick.joseph@umb.edu. We will make sure to put those emails in the chat. And then you can always email our office at orientation@umb.edu, and we can help answer your questions or direct you to the correct office. But thank you all for joining us. This will be our last Friends and Family webinar for this summer, but you can find them all on our YouTube page. We'll make sure to also put that in the chat for you. But we thank you again for joining us and hope you all stay safe and healthy.